Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp, and of course, joining me, Matt Schlapp. How are we doing, honey?
Good, sweetheart. How are you?
Good. It's the start of a busy week. We were just in Kansas for the GOP convention. We had such a great time. Governor Kristi Noem spoke at the event. We also spoke at Kansans for Life. And let me tell you, what was your impression being there in Kansas?
We also got to see my whole family down in Wichita.
Yep.
We got to hook up with a lot of great patriots and freedom lovers. My feeling about leaving the blue state of Virginia and going to Kansas, what are you kidding me? No masks. People said these radical things like, hello, how are you?
Please and thank you.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We had a lot of beef, even though apparently Joe Biden says we can only have a cheeseburger a month. Just so you know, I blew through that quota in the first dinner in Kansas. So.
You and Governor Noem. We drove from Wichita over to Manhattan, and
up to
Manhattan.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful drive. I mean,
it was amazing.
Talk about more cattle than people. Talk about beautiful sceneries.
More tractors than cars.
It was just amazing. And then, of course, we got stuck in Strong City, Kansas. I don't know if any of you out there are from Strong City, Kansas, but I kind of love that name.
Great name.
And there was the longest train I've ever seen. Longest train I've ever seen.
We had a double-decker freight car, which we had to watch for a very long period of time. All of you who grew up in rural America know what that's like. We waited there so long that when the train left, we ended up taking a wrong turn because we were completely disoriented, and we went out of our way for 45 minutes or so. And what is hard for people like my Miami sweetheart right here is what you realize is this is a big damn country. And every time these East Coast people talk about how we're so overpopulated, I want them to come to Strong City.
No
where
kidding.
There's some help wanted signs up. They could use some laborers out there.
So I've got to tell you something. We had such an incredible weekend, but I did feel the passion out there in America. Basically, the sense that we're losing this country, that we need to fight back, that we need to be prepared. And I know there's so many of you out there wondering, what do we do? And that's why we're here at American Conservative Union. That's why we're going to be pushing through and having CPAC in Texas. It's our national conference. That's going to be coming up July 9th through the 11th. We're going to be putting out information, so save the date, because as you know, these tickets go really, really fast. But let's get started. Of course, you know, when Matt gets on Twitter, it's always an adventure.
It's a beautiful thing.
I think it's his way of getting through these difficult times. It's his therapy, quite frankly. So Matt, you tweeted on this big story about former Senator and Secretary John Kerry, who's now the current climate czar for the Biden administration. Apparently, he gave secrets on Israeli military operations to Iranian leaders. Now, he's denying this report, but it is very concerning if this is accurate. And we know Brian Kilmeade interviewed Senator Marco Rubio today, and you tweeted out saying, so is this foreign collusion? Paging Mark Elias.
Mark Elias being the big Democratic lawyer who went around this country making it easier to cheat in the elections last cycle. He's also the lawyer who took the lead on the dirty Russian dossier, that document riddled with lies. And, you know, they said at this point in the Trump administration that he was guilty of foreign collusion.
Right.
Well, if John Kerry did this, is this foreign collusion?
So you mentioned something interesting. You can actually impeach, is that right?
Yep.
John Kerry?
Yeah, if you truly are guilty of collusion, let's face it, that's treason. I always said this about Donald Trump. They're basically saying he was a traitor to America to benefit Vladimir Putin. By the way, why do the Democrats keep calling everybody czars if they don't like Russia? They sure seem to like Russia a lot. Everyone's a czar. But you could impeach anybody guilty of that crime.
Right.
So he's an official of the Biden or Obama administration, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Obama, Biden, Obama. And you know, the consequences of this, if it turns out to be true, are quite severe.
Right, and let me tell you, we're going to be watching this story, because I got to tell you, they're going to have to do some explaining, because what we do know is that the Biden administration is going to move. It looks like they're moving closely to taking off some of these sanctions on Iran, which, as we know, is a huge threat to our ally in Israel. Let's move to topic number 2, as we call it, the tweet therapy for Matt Schlapp. You tweeted out, now Burgess Owens, basically, let me put this into context.
By the way, follow Burgess Owens at...
I love it.
Where is he? At Burgess Owens. That's easy.
That's right. And this tweet, what we've seen is that big tech is giving a lot of big moolah to BLM. You're talking about that between Twitter, Facebook, other folks, they were giving about $7.5 million to the nonprofits controlled by the Marxist Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Couillard. And what we found out there is that Burgess Owens basically said, money donated by big tech to BLM Inc., millions. Money donated by BLM Inc. to black communities, zero.
That's right.
You responded, Congressman Burgess Owens, BLM founder, buys $1 million homes in Tony neighborhood for her family to flee crime, while BLM advocates the abolishment of the nuclear family as a colonial construct.
Yeah, so we all know this now. I have to give the ACU research team a lot of credit, because back during the previous summer, they found all these things that BLM stood for. And can you imagine their solution to the black community is no more black churches and no more families. And so when these corporations are funding Black Lives Matter to literally burn down our cities and to riot, they're also increasing the crime rates in these black communities. Hey, I have an idea. If you're going to speak up and try to help the black community out there in your state, why don't you do things that actually help that community? Don't worry about the cocktail parties you're getting invited to, and if you get invited to the Academy Awards or the Grammys or whatever. Help these young kids. That's what we should all stay focused on, which is why at the ACU, one of our number one policy goals is criminal justice reform, and we're going to keep pushing it.
That's right, and that's something that's obviously a big passion for us here at the American Conservative Union. We're going to move quickly to the third topic, which is that of the Fox News poll that came out saying that 77% of Americans support requiring photo ID for voting. We know that this is common sense. We've been talking about this despite the fact that many of these big corporations have been pressured by the left to basically not go in that direction of supporting voter ID. Yeah,
and as you know, here at the American Conservative Union, we've started this new center, the Center to Protect Voters and Their Voices. We thought we would be focusing on election reform and protecting legal elections and voter ID, but what we realized is every time we take a step to have rules-based voting, corporations and professional sports get in the way, because the left now goes to corporate CEOs to do their bidding for these most extreme of ideas. It's about packing the Supreme Court, ending the filibuster, opening the border. So what we have done, we sent a letter to the Commissioner of Major League Baseball. We sent a letter to the CEO of Delta Airlines. We've sent a letter to the NCAA. We're going to keep doing that and ask these CEOs to meet with us to hear from the 75 million Americans specifically who want to make sure that we have voter ID. This is something that you have to do to go meet with them,
right,
to get into their offices. Some of these big tech companies, in order to get a meeting in their offices, I've done it a lot, they basically ask you a questionnaire. They do a background on you before you can get into the office. Well, if it's that important to get into a high-tech company, how about the shrine of our continued democracy? Shouldn't we have some basic security checks on that as well? And the thing that scares me the most, I don't talk about it that much publicly, but that if the left can undermine our voting system, and just remember, if we had voted the same way in 2020 as we had in 2016, Republicans would have the Senate. Donald Trump would have won many of these states that flipped. So the consequences are very, very severe when you have this level of improper voting. But if the left can undermine our voting system, so can foreign powers. So we got to make sure that it's a very simple concept. I'll fight to the death for every legal vote, no matter what color you are, no matter what your political persuasion. Even if we're going to lose the elections from the candidates we care about, this is a sacred right. Just got to make sure that we have rules.
That's right.
And that's what we're pushing for.
And you always bring up a good point. I think Secretary Mike Pompeo mentioned that to us, that the fact is that they won't verify these elections in foreign countries unless,
well, remember in Iraq, remember the purple finger?
Yep.
That was all about getting their fingerprint to verify who they were.
Right.
And that was the right thing to do, because we want to make sure that they wanted to make sure that the terrorists or other outside influencers like the government of Iran could undermine that election. So we're doubling down on all this. And to the CEOs who haven't responded, some have, by the way, we're already making progress. But to the CEOs who haven't responded, you're going to eventually. I'm telling you, we're going to have this conversation, and you're going to have to go back to being neutral and doing things like making Coca-Cola which we now call Coca-Cola, and we don't buy in our house anymore.
That's right. Well, let's stay together here. We're going to be talking to a great senator, Senator John Cornyn from the great state of Texas. So just stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to CPAC Now. So many of you were excited that we uncanceled America by having a CPAC in Orlando, Florida, where we were constrained by how big the audience could be. And so, you know, it's still chafing in some of these places, even a great state like Florida, which unfortunately didn't have such a great mayor in Orlando.
Chafing. You use these big words sometimes.
It's not
I don't
that
quite
big.
understand.
So anyway, the other state that deserves to be heralded is the state of Texas, who seems to do everything right. And so we're really proud to be taking CPAC to Texas in July. And we want to talk about that and a whole host of other issues, including this big speech that Joe Biden's going to be giving to a joint session with the great conservative senator from Texas, John Cornyn. Senator Cornyn, thanks for joining us on CPAC Now.
Great to be with both of you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why is Texas doing everything right and everyone else seems to be doing everything so wrong?
Well, thank you for the hard question, Matt. I would just say that people are voting with their feet. They're coming to Texas because we still believe in the American dream. Anybody that was willing to work hard and they can build something which benefits not only them but also other people by providing jobs and opportunity and prosperity. So I'm pretty excited about the fact that we're going to get 2 new congressional seats. We were hoping maybe for 3, but we don't want to get too greedy. But that demonstrates, I think, people are leaving the Rust Belt and places with the stagnant economies and less opportunity, coming to places like Texas and maybe even places like Florida.
So you just brought up Texas gaining these 2 seats in the House, which is such great news. And then you have other states like California losing seats. You know, what is your message to these individuals who are saying they are fleeing these lockdown states, these liberal policies that are destroying these communities? What's your message to the people coming to Texas?
They bring me your tired, huddled masses.
Right.
It's really the message of liberty and freedom that is bringing people here. It's not that everybody wants Washington, D.C. or states like California to tell you how you run your life, or when they say jump, you say how high. I mean, people yearn to be free, and I think they sense that there's a different ethos in places like Texas, and we're eager to have them. We've had a huge population increase, as we indicate, but also a huge voter participation rate. We had 66% of registered voters vote in 2020, which is a historic high. We're a large Hispanic population, about 40%. Many Hispanics who are basically very conservative family people realize that the Democratic Party is no longer the party for them, so they're coming to join us, and we're welcoming them with open arms.
And I got to tell you, just on the Hispanic note, since I worked on the Hispanic outreach for the presidential campaign, we did do very well, not only in Texas, but in Florida, in reaching out to these Hispanic communities, because they understand clearly the dangers of socialism and communism that have destroyed their nations. They understand clearly that in order to have opportunity and economic growth for their families and school choice, educational freedom for their children, that they got to vote Republican. And you see so many of those Hispanics that, go to church, they work really hard, and that they see the Democrats basically taking away their religious freedoms, in addition to not giving opportunities to their children. So I do think we've made inroads there. We got to continue to keep working, not only in the Hispanic community, but in the Black community and the Asian community, to say, we are the party of freedom. We are the party of hope and opportunity and prosperity. So go ahead, Senator.
Well, I was just going to say I couldn't agree more. We recently had a hate crimes bill on the floor focused on hate crimes toward Asians, and we had an important amendment that talked about the discrimination against Asians in higher education by some of the policies of elite universities like Yale, and our Democratic colleagues uniformly voted against that. basically in a bill designed to protect Asians from discriminatory conduct. They condoned discriminatory conduct when it came to admissions in our elite higher education institutions. So they're a little confused on this, but they're looking, they play identity politics more than anything else. But what we need to offer people is opportunity, and that's the reason why you saw counties in South Texas go vote for President Trump that previously voted for Democrats, is because you start talking about the Green New Deal or banning fracking, then people realize that you're talking about me losing my job.
So you've got the big day tomorrow. Obviously, President Biden is going to be delivering the joint session address to Congress. What are your expectations? What do you think he's going to say?
Well, I thought he gave a pretty nice speech on January the 20th. It was uplifting. He talked about unifying the country and healing divisions, and then he turned around and governed just the opposite. It's been one of the most partisan presidencies I've ever seen, and all this happy talk so far about bipartisanship has really not yielded much of anything. So I expect you'll hear him read the speech that's written for him and talk about the same sort of themes. But what I would like to see is him actually to deliver on that. We're ready to work with this president in the best interest of the country. I'm sure we can find some things that we agree on, while there some of the extreme agenda of the radical people around him that we can't agree on, we won't agree on, we will fight. But I think there's common ground if he'll let us meet him halfway.
Senator Cornyn, Mitch McConnell's been asked the same question. Has the president called you? Is he reaching out to you regularly to try to unify the country?
Well, I have had one meeting, Matt, at the White House. I've been working on trying to shore up some of our vulnerable supply chains that have been exposed with COVID-19, and things like our dependence on high-end semiconductors from one source in Taiwan. So we have been talking about that. That is one endpoint of bipartisan cooperation. We haven't gotten it done yet, but yes, that's the one meeting we've had. Other meetings we've heard about are, he'll sit and listen, and then his chief of staff will be shaking his head the whole time, like, this ain't going to happen.
Well, you know who's in charge there, I'm assuming, right? It's the chief of staff and Dr.
It's a
Biden.
Secret. Don't give up the secret.
It's a secret. Something else has popped up as well, where Wyoming, Texas, and 8 other states, they filed a lawsuit this week against President Joe Biden and his administration for an executive order addressing climate change that the states allege will lead to massive regulatory outreach. This was an article in the Washington Examiner. What's your sense? I mean, Texas has always been such a leader in so many of these lawsuits that we're seeing against the Biden administration. Why is it important for Texas to engage and stop the Biden administration on their radical climate policies?
Well, we believe in innovation in Texas. We believe in an all of the above energy policy, and we produce more electricity from renewables than any other state in the country, certainly from wind energy. But what they want to do is ignore the reality that we have developed a self-sufficiency when it comes to oil and gas in the United States. Plus, we've been able to export natural gas to friends and allies around the world, and it's changed the geopolitics of the planet. It's certainly made us less dependent on imported energy from the Middle East. So sometimes, when the president takes these executive actions, I think it's an important tool in our toolbox to be able to check that overreach in the courts. And certainly, you're right, Texas hasn't been shy about doing that, and I predict we will not be shy in the future about doing that when President Biden overreaches.
Now, I told you that we have this big news about CPAC coming to Dallas, Texas, July 9th through the 11th. We want to officially invite Senator John Cornyn to be with us on these important dates. We hope you can come. I hope you're excited we're coming.
I am happy to join you, and I guarantee you will not have to wear masks. We'll be open. And of course, Governor Abbott has led the way in making sure that anybody who wants to get a vaccine will get a vaccine. So hopefully by that time, everybody who wants one will take advantage of that. But I know we're all eager to get back to new normal, and certainly we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, and one other question I want to throw at you, Senator you have this long, distinguished career as a lawyer. When you see the Biden administration use racism as a context, not the Biden administration, I have to be fair, but I fear it'll soon be the Biden administration, but so many Democrats using racism as a context to pack and expand the Supreme Court. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm offended, as I think any American should be offended. I asked the nominee for the Civil Rights Division the other day, I said, do you still believe in Martin Luther King's dream? You know, that one day his children would be known by the content of their character, not the color of their skin? She said yes, but almost every other answer, every other statement she made was through a race lens. I thought we were aspiring to a colorblind society where anybody and everybody was treated with equal dignity and respect and given an equal opportunity to succeed. But that doesn't seem to be the agenda of the hard left, which views everything through a lens of race.
Yeah, especially when this wonderful Black American Clarence Thomas is the vote they want to override. Makes no sense.
Well, now they're coming after Tim Scott, who I'm looking forward to hearing from tomorrow night as well.
Well, we appreciate you so much being on with us on CPAC Now. We appreciate everything you're doing in Texas to give America hope, and we look forward to seeing you in July. Senator John Cornyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a million.
Welcome back to CPAC Now. What a great conversation we just had with John Cornyn. We've had Ted Cruz on a couple times, but it's good for folks to hear from Senator Cornyn, who comes to the Senate with a different perspective, specifically having served on the Texas Supreme Court. And you can see how offended he is by this whole idea of court packing.
I think we're all offended by court packing.
But Governor,
I mean, that's insane.
It is insane. Governor Greg Abbott and Governor Ron DeSantis aren't the only governors who are doing the right things. We have a great conservative governor in the state of Oklahoma. As a Kansan, it pains me to be complimenting
hey,
the
your
Okies.
Governor in Kansas
Sucks.
No good. No
she's
good
not
Democrat.
So good.
But we're going to get a Republican governor.
So Governor Stitt from Oklahoma signed the heartbeat bill in Oklahoma, and I loved it on Twitter. He puts it out there on Twitter, or the great website. By the way, I can't see a dang thing. I'm sorry, but lifenews.com. I follow them on Twitter.
Yeah.
At LifeNewsHQ.
Yeah.
Follow them. If you care at all about this humanitarian issue of unborn life, they have a great Twitter feed. You learn so much. But then Governor Abbott one-upped Governor Stitt by saying, hey, Texas is next to sign this heartbeat bill. Folks, as discouraged as we all get about the swamp and what's going on with this walled-in city in Washington, D.C., we still have great conservative governors out there in the country. Not as many as we need, but hats off to the governor of Oklahoma. I also want to say hats off to Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, who signed an important criminal justice reform bill. Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee has been very active on those issues as well. We have some great news out there in the country. And as Regina often reminds us here on the show,
she's our producer.
We have to talk about the good news.
Yes.
And as much as there's a lot of bad news, there's also a lot of good news that brave and courageous people are standing up and getting done.
That's right. And that's why don't lose hope. We need a lot of prayer during this time in our country. We are going to get through this. We're going to stand strong together, and that's why we're here at American Conservative Union and at CPAC to make sure that your voices are heard. But we can't leave the show without talking about the Oscars.
Oh,
it happened on Sunday night. Did you know that?
Oscars.
I didn't see it. Did you
I
see
used
it?
to watch it as a kid. I will not watch it. I didn't watch the Grammys. I didn't watch the Oscars. I'm not watching the Emmys. I'm not watching any of this stuff.
It's great. So, of course, Matt Schlapp tweeted out, and you can follow him at Schlapp. He said, "Dear Grammy and Oscar, your audiences added together almost got you 2/3 of the CPAC Florida audience with President Trump, even with aggressive throttling by big tech. Keep your chin up. One day you might make the big time." I thought that was hilarious.
Think about that. We get discouraged because we're told we're such miserable people, but the reason why we know there's more of us than of them is that we have 31 million people watch CPAC with President Trump and others, his son and a lot of great senators and Ron DeSantis and stuff. But they have only 2/3 of the audience with all these famous people, all the money,
all the pretty
big
gowns,
tech,
all the pretty,
all of that.
But you know what? I really
That's why they have to cheat to win elections. You can tell just by the Nielsen ratings.
Well, but you know what it is? I think it's because Americans are just simply tired of the elites like celebrating themselves, like the celebrities saying, "Here you
Barf.
get an award for being, you know, so
Okay,
great." We can't even watch the
so
movies.
let me ask you a
Like you
question.
can't even go to the theaters to watch the movies. So you're like, I don't even know who was up for Best Picture or anything like that.
It's insane. So, like, at the same point, they won't say Best Actress anymore. It's like Best Actress or Best Actor in a Female Lead or whatever they're convoluted
I thought
language.
they didn't care about genders.
If they don't care about gender, this is my point. Why is there a woman award and a male award?
Right.
Why isn't there just an award?
Good
like
point.
they only want gender when it can mean they can pass out more Oscars to more of those people. And now they will only nominate movies that meet their standard of racial diversity of the cast and everything else, to the point where a bunch of movies apparently got nominated that no one ever heard of.
Right.
Because they satisfy their racial quota dogma, but they don't satisfy the consumer desire to see a good movie. And by the way, we didn't watch any movies because you shut down the damn movie theaters.
That's
so
right.
why are we having the Oscars? It doesn't make any sense at all.
As you can tell, Matt Schlapp has a lot to say, because then he tweeted out afterwards, he was very excited about this topic. Dear Oscar, doesn't CPAC deserve an Oscar for getting more than 3 times the viewership with President Trump than you got for your own woke awards show? I just think that there's a desire that the only show to watch is CPAC. And that's why you're going to join us July 9th through the 11th in Dallas, Texas.
I'm not done yet.
Oh,
why
sorry.
would
Let
the
him go.
governor of
Let
New
him
York
go.
get an Emmy when we're getting all these TV ratings that are through the roof? Anytime you're in the swamp or you're in New York City and you meet with a liberal, they have a couple of Emmys on their shelf. Where's our Emmy? Right? Fair.
We'll just make our own.
We'll
Emmy
have a
and
grassroots
come up
campaign
with
to
a
get an
different
Emmy.
name. That's right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you deserve an Emmy, sweetheart, for just hanging in there with me.
Putting up with you?
Yes,
I
it's
would
true.
totally agree. No, we were just saying today how great it is that we're able to spend so much time together. When I was at the White House for those 2 years, I really felt that, it was such a tough time for our family.
Really?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, more,
okay.
it was tougher for you than for me. But I have to say, I think we're committed to what we're doing every single day to bring you the best news analysis, to bring you the best newsmakers and top leaders that are impacting policies throughout the states and in our nation. But remember, make sure to follow us and talk to your friends about this. On all of our social channels, that includes Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at CPAC. Hopefully they won't delete us. They might, you never know.
It happens.
Follow at M Schlapp, and you can follow me as well, at Mercedes Schlapp. And also let us know what you think about the show and send us your pictures. We'd love to put them up on the show, figure out what you guys are all up to, and keep us connected during this difficult time. But we will succeed. We will come through this all together. So thank you so much. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.